Live from the Al Newhart Media Center, this is Just Hear Me Out with Peyton Byers.
Hello and welcome everybody to Just Hear Me Out. I'm your host here, Peyton Byers, on KAOR 91.1 FM Vermilion. And I hope you're all having a very happy President's Day. I know I am, prepping for this show here. If you want to get in contact with me or have updates about this show, you can follow me on Facebook at Just Hear Me Out 91.1 or on Twitter at Just Hear Me Out SD. And you can also listen to past shows on YouTube by just searching Just Hear Me Out. Or you can hear them on coyoteradio.wixsite.com. That's coyoteradio.wixsite.com. And so you can hear all that on there. And let's get right into it here. So the first topic I'm going to talk about today is former CEO of Starbucks, or current CEO of Starbucks. I'm not sure if he's still there, but Howard Schultz. He's talked about wanting to be a presidential candidate, and some Democrats don't really like him. So this past week, the possible Democratic presidential candidate Howard Schultz was attacked by many Democrats because he made some comments on race. And now you might be thinking, wow, another racist guy, that's not good. Well, not really. Democrats already hated Schultz because he's a moderate Democrat, and they think he'll split the Democratic vote and allow Trump to win re-election. So they already don't like him. They think he shouldn't run. And they hate him so much they are attacking him for saying that he doesn't see color. So they were talking about race, and he's like, he said, I was raised in the projects, and so I don't see color. I don't judge people based on that. And he was attacked on social media. Trevor Noah on his show, just lambasted him on it. And he's been known to go after Schultz for a lot of different things, but this not seeing color, that used to be the only acceptable stance that there was. And now in the age of intersectionality and identity politics, we need to see color so we can discriminate against races like Asians or whites in college applications and stuff like that, or scholarship admissions. And so they can't accept that anymore. Next, we're going to be looking at, I already talked about the Green New Deal last week, and just some interesting updates on what happened. So the Green New Deal was still being talked about this week, and Democrats like Senator Ed Markey they keep making things better. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez proposed the bill to the House, and Skeletor herself, Nancy Pelosi, refused to even bring it up for a vote, despite the fact that she talked it up and called it bold. But, her calling it bold, it's not a good kind of bold, I don't think she called it. So Pelosi refused to bring it up for a vote. And Ed Markey, the Green New Deal co-sponsor in the Senate, proposed the bill. And then, much to his surprise, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell decided that he was going to bring it up for a vote. And so let's listen to Turtle Mitch here and just listen to the glee in his voice. This is probably the happiest Mitch McConnell has ever been in his entire life.
I've noted with great interest the Green New Deal. And we're going to be voting on that in the Senate. We'll give everybody an opportunity to go on record and see how they feel about the Green New Deal.
And the best part of this was the reaction by Democrats, especially Ed Markey himself. He tweeted, quote, "Don't let Mitch McConnell fool you. This is nothing but an attempt to sabotage the movement we are building. He wants to silence your voice so Republicans don't have to explain why they're climate change deniers. McConnell wants this to be the end, but this is just the beginning," end quote. So have you ever heard a more defensive tweet in your life? Mitch McConnell is bringing a sweeping economy-destroying environmental bill to a vote in the Senate because he's a climate change denier. Isn't this kind of strange that Markey proposed a bill to the Senate, and then when Mitch McConnell threatened to do what he would do with any other normal Senate bill and call it to a vote, Markey claims it's sabotage? Was Ed Markey sabotaging himself by just proposing the bill in the first place? I don't quite understand. The bill must have been pretty bad when people who proposed it get offended when somebody offers to vote on it, because the vote would expose how bad it truly is and how few people actually support it. Next on the list of things we're going to talk about here, Democrat from Minnesota, Ilhan Omar. So this past week, she's gotten in some trouble, some hot water for some anti-Semitic remarks that she made on Twitter. Essentially, she just insinuated that the only reason anyone in Congress is in support of Israel which, by the way, is the only democracy in the Middle East, is because they are under the influence of Jewish money. And she said, quote, "It's all about the Benjamins." So This prompted a pretty strong response, with many people coming out and condemning her from both sides of the aisle for her anti-Semitism. Even Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, Skeletor herself, issued a statement asking Ilhan Omar to apologize. But that was it. She just asked her to apologize. And then Omar tweeted saying she unequivocally, quote, unequivocally apologizes. And then she proceeded to double down on the remarks that got her in trouble in the first place, basically said the exact same thing over again. And everyone on the left went, look, she apologized. It was a misunderstanding. She apologized. Look. And it would be one thing if it was a one-off incident and she just like slipped up or like misunderstood what the remark she was saying. People make mistakes. Not everybody's perfect. But it's not a one-time incident. Ilhan Omar has a very long history of anti-Semitism. And, I mean, when Representative from Iowa, Steve King, insinuated that white nationalism was acceptable, Republican leadership censored him and revoked all of his committee positions, all of his committee assignments. But when Ilhan Omar makes an anti-Semitic remark, Democratic leadership just asked her for an apology and then proceeded to leave her on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, despite the fact that her apology was about as sincere as Elizabeth Warren's claim of about as sincere of Elizabeth. Can I speak? About as sincere as Elizabeth Warren's claim of Native American heritage. So, yeah, Ilhan Omar then continued to make herself look bad by exposing herself as being in support of Nicolas Maduro's regime in Venezuela, which is really bad. She received praise from leftists all over social media for her questioning of Elliot Abrams, the U.S. envoy to Venezuela, at a House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing. She started by calling him the wrong name and then personally attacking his credibility. She doesn't even know what she's talking about in this clip. She's just reading from a piece of paper, and she doesn't even know how to pronounce the critical event she's talking about. So here, let's have a listen to this.
Mr. Adams, in 1991, you pleaded guilty to 2 counts of withholding information from Congress regarding your involvement in the Iran-Contra affair, for which you were later pardoned by President George H.W. Bush. I fail to understand why members of this committee or the American people should find any testimony that you give today to be truthful.
So she comes right out. I don't even know if she knows what the Iran-Contra affair is. She can't pronounce it. And then when Abrams tries to defend himself from her attack, she refuses to let him respond. So she just comes out and says, yeah, you're a dirty liar. And then this is what ensued after that.
If I can respond to that.
It wasn't a question.
On February,
that was not a question. That was I reserve the right to my time.
It is not right.
That was not a question.
Committee can attack
on February 8th,
who is not permitted to reply.
That was not a question. Thank you for your participation.
So then after that, she finally gets into the substance of her argument about Abrams' past involvement in Central American affairs. And here's what that sounded like.
On February 8th, 1982, you testified before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee about U.S. policy in El Salvador. In that hearing, you dismissed as communist propaganda report about the massacre of El Mozote, in which more than 800 civilians, including children as young as 2 years old, were brutally murdered by U.S.-trained troops. During that massacre, some of those troops bragged about raping a 12-year-old girl before they killed them. Girls before they killed them. You later said that the U.S. policy in El Salvador was a fabulous achievement. Yes or no, do you still think so?
From the day that President Duarte was elected in a free election to this day, El Salvador has been a democracy. That's a fabulous achievement.
Yes or no, do you think that massacre was a fabulous achievement that happened under our watch?
That is a ridiculous question, and I
yes or no?
No.
I will take that as a yes.
So first of all, Ilhan Omar, the self-proclaimed intersectional feminist, of all people, should know that no means no. And she's just trying to straw man him to death here, and he's perfectly justified in calling her questions ridiculous. I mean, of course nobody condemns massacres and rape. The line of questioning is all for show. It's all to get attention. It's all for the social media support of all of her cronies. And a lot of bad stuff happened in Central America during the Cold War. What Omar forgets to mention is that the horrible people who killed a few innocent people, And don't get me wrong, what they did was horrible. This should never happen. Those people were like, that's horrible that the massacre happened. But those people were trained by the U.S. so they could fight off Soviet communists who were responsible for killing tens of millions of people. And again, the massacre shouldn't have happened at all. But sometimes there's just bad situations where nothing's going to go well. And unfortunately, that's what happened in a lot of Central American countries during the Cold War. Now, Ilhan Omar, none of the options were good. Yeah. Now, Ilhan Omar is trying to claim that because a group we trained in El Salvador during the Cold War did some horrible things, that we need to support Nicolas Maduro's horrible, murderous, socialist, human rights violating, dictatorial regime. It's unbelievable. She tweeted, quote, "A U.S.-backed coup in Venezuela is not the solution to the dire issues they face. Trump's efforts to install a far-right opposition will only incite violence and further destabilize the region. We must support Mexico, Uruguay, and the Vatican's efforts to facilitate a peaceful dialogue," end quote. So she's absolutely insane if she believes that there's a U.S.-backed coup. There's no U.S.-backed coup in Venezuela. All we have done is recognized Guaido, who under their law is the legitimate president, as the president of Venezuela. Guaido is by no means far-right either. He's just merely the head of the opposition to Venezuela's far-left dictatorial regime that Maduro is running. The idea that the U.S. policy surrounding Venezuela will incite violence is absolute lunacy. The reason violence is happening is because the people of Venezuela are sick of starving to the point of having to eat their families' pets, and they know that Maduro's recent election was a giant scam. They know it was a bunch of baloney. So Guaido has the legitimate claim to the presidency, and the reason he's got the claim is the Venezuelan constitution states that in the absence of a legitimate president, there will be new elections, and the head of the Venezuelan assembly would act as the interim president. That's who Guaido is. The real coup is Maduro's attempt to dismiss the Venezuelan constitution and to maintain control for himself. So I think a lot of people have kind of scolded Ilhan Omar for that statement, but it's just not acceptable that she's supporting dictatorial regimes like that. That's just not good. So anyway, we're going to go to a break real quick, and then we'll be back. When we get back, we're going to discuss the Jussie Smollett story and how the media have once again crapped the bed. Alrighty, we're back here on KOR 91.1 FM Vermilion. This is Just Hear Me Out. I'm your host, Peyton Byers. And just a little reminder, the opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of this station, the USD Department of Media and Journalism, or the University of South Dakota. Alrighty, so let's get back into it here. The next topic we're going to talk about here is the Jussie Smollett case. So Jussie Smollett, he's an actor on the TV show Empire. And he claimed that two masked men attacked him late at night in an alley, doused him with bleach, strung a noose around his neck, and then yelled, "This is MAGA country." He claimed that this was an anti-gay, anti-black attack committed by Trump supporters who did it because they recognized him for the show, and this was all incited by Trump's rhetoric and stuff, and this is a problem with the United States. And the case kind of seemed a little suspicious from the start. This happened in Chicago at 2 a.m. during a polar vortex. And first question I have is, since when is Chicago MAGA country? I don't know if they're I think basically 0% of people who live in Chicago support Donald Trump. What Trump fans watch Empire is another question. And Small claimed he was on the phone with his manager at the time. And the manager says he heard them yelling, "This is MAGA country," through the phone and stuff like that. And then when police asked for his phone, Smollett refused to give them his phone. When they asked for his phone records, he refused to give them his phone records and eventually handed over an Excel spreadsheet with so much information missing that the police said it was useless. And then they got proper permission. I don't know if they got a warrant or they got something. Anyway, they got the real phone records, the full phone records. And then what they did is they just used the list that he gave them, and he eliminated, they didn't even look at all the things that he gave them, and then they looked at the stuff that he didn't give them. So he actually helped them out by telling them what not to look at. Once the people started getting suspicious of him, Smollett went on an ABC News interview with Robin Roberts, and just listen to what that sounded like real quick here.
I'm pissed off.
What is it that has you so angry? Is it the attackers?
It's the attackers, but it's also the attacks. It's like You know, at first it was a thing of like, listen, if I tell the truth, then that's it, because it's the truth. Mm-hmm. Then it became a thing of like, oh, how can you doubt that? Like, how do you not believe that? It's the truth. And then it became a thing of like, oh, it's not necessarily that you don't believe that this is the truth. You don't even want to see the truth.
And so, well, it turns out the only issue is he's not telling the truth. Let's remember he's an actor, and so in the original video, the surveillance video, there's a lot of cameras in Chicago, and the surveillance video from the coverage from different buildings, he's only missing from the video surveillance for about a minute. And when he returns, there's the noose around his neck, and he's still holding his Subway order that he was holding before he got into the scuffle. So that's interesting. He must really like that sandwich. Maybe it was an Italian BMT. I don't know. He then returned home and walked by the guard in his apartment, walked into his apartment, and waited another 40 minutes before calling the police. And then soon after, video surveillance surfaced of two men wearing hoodies near the time and place where Smollett was attacked. And so he was shown this picture that was brought up by police, this little screenshot of the video surveillance, and they showed it to him at the interview that he was at, and this is what he had to say about that.
The police have gone through a lot of video, and they were able to capture an image of two people of interest. Have you seen that image, and do you believe that they could possibly be the attackers?
I do.
What is it about their size, or why do you feel that they could possibly be?
Because I was there. For me, when that was released, I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. I don't have any doubt in my mind that that's them.
So Jussie Smollett's out here really trying to get that Emmy. He's trying to win some awards, maybe an Oscar. Anyway, soon after, the police found out that the two men pictured were actually brothers, both of whom have acted in guest roles alongside Smollett in the TV show Empire. And so the night of the attack, after the attack happened, or the alleged attack, the brothers flew out to Nigeria after the attack, and they were arrested by police when they returned a few days later. And before Jussie Smollett knew that the brothers were found, he said he would definitely sign a complaint against the suspects if they were found. Like, referring to the two people in the picture, he said if they found those two guys, he would definitely sign a complaint against them. And then once he found out that it was the brothers once he found out that they actually found the people in the picture, he refused to sign the complaint against them. Police have found that the rope around Smollett's neck was purchased by the brothers, and when they raided their apartment, they found ropes, masks, and bleach. They also found magazines with pages torn out that may have been used to construct a threatening letter that arrived at Smollett's house 8 days before the alleged attack. So the way the police found the brothers was by tracking their movement before and after the alleged attack. After the attack, they were seen leaving in either a cab or an Uber, and then they got out of the vehicle and got into another one. So it was kind of like a bad spy movie situation. They tried to switch cars and stuff. Once they were arrested, the brothers cooperated with the police, and they claimed that Smollett paid them to stage the attack. So that's pretty damning for Smollett there. And they were released with no charges, and they're under watch by police, though, for their protection, as well as to make sure Smollett doesn't try to contact them. Smollett alleged that the attackers were wearing MAGA hats during the attack, and this is kind of funny. The brothers were unable to find a MAGA hat in Chicago. So this supposed MAGA country, and they can't find a single MAGA hat in Chicago. So they went to a discount craft store and bought generic red hats to wear when they did it. And so they bought those red hats. And also, Smollett, when he took police to the location of the attack, he immediately pointed up at a camera and was like, look, there's a camera. I'm so glad it's been caught. But the camera was facing the other direction, and police thought it was really weird that he instantly knew where the camera was as soon as they got there. So that's kind of interesting. Chicago police now say that they are no longer considering Smollett a victim in this case. And this is just yet another time where the media just completely crapped the bed with their coverage. I mean, honestly. Why do they have to jump to conclusions so immediately without any information? It's like an everyday thing to them now. I mean, literally all the mainstream media is turning into TMZ. And then people like the Democratic presidential candidate frontrunner Kamala Harris, she came out with tweets like this one, like, quote, "This was an attempted modern-day lynching. No one should have to fear for their life because of their sexuality or the color of their skin. We must confront this hate." So she just, end quote. So she just bought in completely hook, line, and sinker into this like the rest of the media did. And she proposed an anti-lynching bill, which, whatever, I mean, it's good. Anti-lynching is good, but I mean, everything involved with lynching is already illegal. So it just strengthens federal crime. So that's fine. That's great. Like, that's completely good. But when they say that it's because of the Jussie Smollett attack that they're doing that, then it's like, because it was in fact just a big why. I mean, people are just being willfully blind to this stuff at this point. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Jussie Smollett is a liar. He's a liar, and everybody should be able to come together and condemn him as the liar that he is. It's just that simple. I mean, this was quite obviously a desperate plea for attention, and the media are sure happy to give it to him. All this does is hurt anyone who might be a victim of an actual hate crime in the future. So congratulations, Jussie Smollett. You just marginalized anybody who might actually be the victim to a real hate crime in the future. And there was a Wall Street Journal. I'm not sure if that was it. It was one of the big major news outlets. There was an opinion piece where someone claimed that they were actually, they wanted it to be true. They wanted the Jussie Smollett thing to be true, which that's just absolutely disgusting because they wanted it to be true so it would fit their narrative, which is, it's stupid. I mean, the reason the media jump off on stuff like this without evidence is because it fits their narrative that America is a horrible racist place and that it's this way because of Trump, and Trump's the issue, and Trump is the cause of all their problems. And I think Whoopi Goldberg, of all people, put it the right way back when she was talking about the MAGA hat kids incident, the Covington Catholic incident on The View. She basically just admitted that people in the media, including herself, hate Trump so much that they will do literally anything, run with any story, ruin anyone's life, if it means they can continue their narrative. Moral of the story, as usual, the media needs to start waiting for all the information to come out before jumping on top of a story. And as it comes out, they don't really care about getting the facts right, so that's kind of unfortunate. They jump on a story and then they walk it back slowly, so hopefully people don't notice. And they're just doing this to reinforce their narrative, and it's really kind of gross. And not long ago, AOC said that people are too focused on the facts of this kind of story. I mean, what? She said that they need to quit focusing on the facts and just focus on the morality of the story. Just because it turns out some of these stories are completely false doesn't mean the overall narrative is wrong, is her viewpoint. And this is Liz Plank, senior producer at Fox, on CNN, defending the media's garbage coverage of this story. So even though they all knew it was false, she's defending how they covered it as being this bad, horrible hate crime instead of condemning Jussie Smollett as the lying piece of just the lying human that he is.
I think it's important to cover this story. I also think it's important to cover the other several stories of hate crimes. Not to say that this was a story of a hate crime, but that there are real hate crimes that happen in this country, and there's an increase in them against black people, against LGBTQ people, against Muslims. And the fact that one robbery was fake does not mean that robbery is not a problem. The fact that there is one false rape accusation does not mean that there's no rape. We have to cover these issues as trends and as patterns and not fall into the trap that because one story is not real, that the problem is not real.
I mean, essentially, her observations are for the most part correct, but her conclusion that she makes from it is just total garbage. If it's a fake story, we should not cover the story because all that does is, remove credibility from all the real instances that it happens. Yes, just because one thing is fake does not mean all the rest of them are fake. But by giving blanket coverage to something that is quite obviously at least very suspicious at the minimum, and instead of waiting for the facts to come out, you just jump all over that and you cover that. And then when it comes out to be false, you just go, oh, well, we should have covered it anyway. All that's going to do is raise suspicion among the populace about your intentions as a media organization. And they're not going to believe you if you report on something that actually is a hate crime and horrible and bad. And the problem here is that the media uses fake stories like the Jussie Smollett story or the Covington High School story as a foundation for their narrative that America is just a horrible racist place full of hateful Trump-supporting bigots who roam the streets at 2 a.m. in Chicago during a polar vortex hunting for black people from their favorite show, Empire. And then when the stories fall through, they still claim that the narrative is true even though the foundations were stripped out from under it. You can tell whenever the media messes something up or a Democrat makes a mistake because instead of running with the actual story, with the actual headline, Jussie Smollett faked attack, the headline is now Republicans pounce. Since when is the story somebody reacting to the story? When Steve King was exposed to be the racist that he is, the story wasn't Democrats pounce. The story was Steve King is a racist, and that's what it should have been. That's how it should have been. But AOC's Green New Deal frequently asked questions came out, and the story wasn't that she was a full-fledged communist who wants the government to pay people who are unwilling to work. The story that they ran with was that Republicans pounced on her and that she was a victim of some kind of political assault. This document came from her office. It was posted on her website, and her chief of staff was in the metadata as one of the authors. This came from her. What this document is what they believe in. It's kind of disgusting how this is all going. So, all right, we're going to go into a little break here. When I get back, we're going to look into the situation with the new budget deal and Trump's national emergency aspirations. We'll be right back. All right, we're back here on Just Hear Me Out with me, Peyton Byers, your host on KOR 91.1 FM Vermilion. The opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of this station, the USD Department of Media and Journalism, or the University of South Dakota. So what's going on here is, instead of having another government shutdown, Trump has decided to sign a budget deal to avoid the shutdown, and the deal he ended up signing was not a very good one. The bill was approximately 1,100 pages long, and the draft of the bill was completed late at night, the night before Congress was supposed to vote on it. And that's one thing I do not like that. So there's a reason there's no reason for the bill to be that long. And it's definitely extremely irresponsible for Congress to vote on a bill if there's no way any of them can read it completely or even read it partially before they vote on it. So this bill allots Trump less border wall money than the deal that he rejected back in November from the Democrats. And I think he just signed it because nobody really has the taste for another government shutdown. Instead, Trump has opted to go through and declare a national emergency in order to fund his wall. This is dangerous, and I don't think it's a very good move for him to make. Declaring a national emergency because you failed to make a deal is not really the proper way to handle these things. Trump claims he's a great deal maker, but if he is, he should have been able to make this deal. So I don't see any way this is going to hold up in the courts. I think it's an executive overreach, but even if it does hold up in court, I think it's a bad decision because it opens the door for national emergency powers to be abused more in the future and expanded. And this may seem like a win for Trump's base in the short term, but it's eventually going to come back to bite them in the long term. So this is kind of like when the Democrats in the Senate decided to force executive positions and judicial nominations through by using the nuclear option in November 2013. And then it came back to bite them when Republicans were able to do the same thing when confirming Supreme Court Justices Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh in Trump's presidency here. So this deal gives $1.375 billion for border security, which is well below the $5.7 that Trump was asking for. And it allows him to build another 55 miles of border fencing, maybe. There's one bright spot, and it's that President Trump can declare under 10 U.S.C. 284 that drug corridors must have additional fencing built, so he can do that and get fencing built along drug corridors. So that's a plus side. Another positive is that to come out of this is that Trump, I think, has exposed how radical the Democrats are over border security. They're so radically against border security that Beto O'Rourke said he would support spending tax dollars to tear down existing wall and fencing. It's already there on the border, and he would support spending tax dollars to tear it down. And so conservatives used to be called alarmists when they claimed that Democrats were open borders nut jobs, but now it's just that's the mainstream position. And so they're so mindlessly consumed by their fight against Trump that one of their negotiating points when they were talking about this new budget deal is that they wanted to lower the amount of beds available to ICE for detained criminals. These are the same people who claim that ICE violates human rights by not providing adequate room or supplies for the people they have in custody. They are the problem. They don't have the resources because they're not being deprived, or they don't have the resources because they're being deprived of the resources. But Democrats know that if ICE doesn't have enough room for the people, their only other option is to release them into the public, and that's what the Democrats are cheering for. They say, quote, or not quote, they say people have died in ICE custody, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I mean, a few people have died in ICE custody, but it's not because ICE abused them or was negligent. They died because they were already so far gone when they arrived in ICE custody that they died despite the medical care provided to them by ICE. People died of dehydration when they were already too far gone. It's not ICE's fault. ICE isn't there beating people, and there's a a false narrative going around in the media, like always. And so leftists want everybody to just be let in regardless of their criminal history. They want everybody to come into the country. And listen, I am for people, like, I'm all for people immigrating here legally. If you make the journey to the point of entry and you're not a drug smuggler or a human trafficker or some other kind of felon or a murderer or anything, if you're just here looking for an opportunity and a better life, I am all for welcoming those people in with open arms. The issue is there are a few really bad people mixed in with the good people. If I give you a bowl of Skittles and I say, look at all these great Skittles, you can have all of them, but a few of them are poisoned. And if you inspect them, you'll be able to tell if they're poisoned. Would you just unhinge your jaw and dump every last Skittle into your throat and hope for the best? Or would you look at each little Skittle individually first and make sure that it isn't going to kill you? That's what I don't understand about the border security argument. People try to mischaracterize people who support stronger border control as racists, but that's not true. I mean, if we had larger amounts of drugs and human trafficking pouring in from Canada, I would support stronger Canadian border security. I'd be like, yeah, put a wall up there, keep the people from Quebec out and the Canucks and stuff. So it has nothing to do with race. And some people argue that we need to allow unchecked immigration because some families are fleeing gang violence or they need to escape, which, I mean, there are some families that are fleeing gang violence and they do, like, it would be nice to let them in. But the issue is the reason they come here to escape the gang violence is because the U.S. is very good, or like we attempt to avoid letting the murderous gangsters in. We have a better police system and we protect people. If we just open up the gates and let everybody in without looking into their background, there will be no safety from gang violence here because the gangs will be able to cross the border just as easily as those people who are fleeing them. Democrats used to all be in favor. They used to be all in favor of stricter immigration laws, but they know that their social redistributionist policies will attract tons of people to the U.S., and the system won't be able to support that. And that's why countries like Sweden have strong border control and strict immigration policies. I would rather eliminate most of the socialist programs and just allow people to come to the U.S. and work. The whole idea of America is that you can have the opportunity to work hard and be successful. It's not a guarantee. It's an opportunity. You're not guaranteed to be successful. You're not guaranteed to have live a lavish life. You're just guaranteed an opportunity to do. And that's what America provides. And if you make the right choices, the opportunity is there for the taking. And so that's all I had written down on my show map for today. There's a couple other little stories I do want to look at just because they're kind of entertaining. So in Colorado, there was a guy out jogging, and he was attacked by a mountain lion, and he strangled the mountain lion to death with his bare hands. So that's just, I mean, bravo to that guy. He just killed the mountain lion with his bare hands. So that guy's tough. I mean, they should put him on the Wheaties box, do whatever else. I mean, he should be all over everywhere. Another interesting thing was Trump held a rally in El Paso, Texas, and Beto O'Rourke also held a rally about 1,000 feet away from where Trump's rally was being held. And it was pretty entertaining. You could hear, so Trump, as Beto's talking, he's saying, walls are evil, walls are immoral. By the way, there was a wall protecting his entire rally from people from the outside. So that's kind of interesting. But he was saying, walls are evil, we need to get rid of the wall. You could hear Trump's walk-on music for his rally start playing in the background, and it drowns out what Beto O'Rourke is saying. And it's kind of entertaining because everything just kind of gets quiet, and they hear Trump coming up, and then you hear cheers. And they're not cheers from Beto's rally. They're cheers from Trump's rally. And so that's kind of interesting that on his home field, El Paso, Texas, Beto can't draw a fraction of the crowd that Trump was able to draw. And I guarantee you when Beto was running for Congress in Texas, he was not running on the get rid of the wall and open borders thing that he's running on now. Right now, he's just trying to out-progressive people like Elizabeth Warren and Kamala Harris and Cory Booker, some of the other presidential candidates. And so Cory Booker also said something in Iowa. He was at a town hall, and he said that the world can no longer sustain eating meat, which is kind of interesting. I'd like to see the data that he's citing on that. I don't know where that comes from, but anyway, that's all I have for today. Thank you for listening to Just Hear Me Out with me, Peyton Byers, on KAOR 91.1 FM Vermilion. Make sure to go follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook at Just Hear Me Out 91.1 and Twitter at Just Hear Me Out ST. We'll see you next week with some more news and interesting updates on current events. That's all for today. Adios.